Hi everyone, my name is Renee Burns and this is my Module 1 for EDL 854 Building Finance. A little about myself. My professional experience has all been at O'Laughlin Elementary here in Hays, Kansas. I'm actually on my 14th year this year at this school. I teach at a looping school, which is really kind of cool. I teach 2nd and 3rd grade, so I keep the same students for 2 years in a row and then start back over in 2nd grade with a brand new group of kids. Lots of pros and cons for that, so if you're interested, let me know, and I'd love to speak more about that. I'm part of the building leadership team and the foundations team, and then I also create little morning news segments, videos that go out to all of the kids in our school every day. And then another benefit of being so close to Fort Hays State University is having so many student teachers and interns, and I mentor a lot of those and keep fresh on the new trends in teaching, and it's nice to interact with new beginning teachers on a regular basis. So a little about my personal life. My little boys here, Brody and Byron. Brody is in middle school this year and Byron's in 2nd grade. My husband works at Fort Hays State University, so that's kind of cool, that connection there. We are a Chiefs family, and we love to travel, and our goal before the boys move on in college is to visit all the national parks. So we'll see how far we get. Module 1, so moving on to our resources that we read. So our first resource spoke a lot to the difference between your traditional central-based management system versus the site-based management system. And there were pros and cons for both of those. We're going to start with the site-based management system, also known as SBM. Essentially, this transfers the autonomy of the budgetary decisions made to the building leader. So usually the building leader has a better idea of where the money needs to go and where it needs to be spent, and can be innovative with how that's spent. And all of that can be focused on the needs and goals that are in that specific building. Whereas the central-based management system is your traditional. It offers lots of good things though too. It's got the consistency, economy of scale, and cohesiveness when your district is a bit larger, which Hays isn't that large of a town, but when you look at all the districts around Kansas, it is fairly larger, on the larger side. So when you're looking at curriculum in a larger district, you often want consistency for each building to have one adoption of the curriculum, and even just technology, the devices that you choose, the lots of different scenarios there. Within our district, we often share our resources from one elementary to another. There's 4 elementaries here. And so we share a lot of the physical resources, but also human resources. So the staffing is often going to be an issue if it is changing from the traditional central-based. If we were to look at a more building based, it would look very different, and I think the consistency would be very hard. When the finances are handled district wide, I would think it would be much easier because our resources are so fluid within our district and across the buildings. Cost effectiveness with transportation was mentioned by the author, and then the system of record by HR must be efficient and accurate. So this speaks to the process efficiency when these systems are centralized. So our second resource, let's see if this will go here. There it goes. Our second resource was by Petrick, and this person spoke to the financial responsibilities of the principal. It was a fairly short article, but some of the things that I gleaned from that article was that the author mentioned that the budget ensures that schools achieve their goals, establishes a control system, and that the budget motivates employers to work hard, or employees to work harder. From my past experiences, fundraising has been handled more by the PTA, so I was surprised to see that it was mentioned by the author in this article. It makes sense, though, that the building leader needs to be the head of that and ensure that the funds are being used as they are intended to be used, and that the guidelines are followed throughout that process. All right, our third article was very overwhelming for me. I do not have a lot of experience with accounting, so I will be learning of a massive amount throughout this course. This article focused on the management functions with the finances. There were 3 common financial reports that the article focused heavily on, so I'm going to talk about each one of those. So the first report was the income statement, and this report shows that the school's revenue and the spending. So there were 3 categories mentioned within the income statement: the gross profit margin, the net profit, and the net profit margin. The gross profit margin displays how well your school is performing financially. The net profit shows the school's bottom line of income after the accounting of all the costs and taxes. And then the net profit margin shows how much profit each dollar of sales generates. The next report was the balance sheet. This assesses the financial health of your school. And there were 5 terms that I really need to become familiar and comfortable with. I've heard all of these terms, it's just I'm not able to explain them all that well. So this is good for me to practice. Assets are the resources that increase the value of your school. The liabilities are the legal financial debts of the school. Net worth are the assets minus the liabilities. Current ratio determines if your school is able to pay for the obligations. And then the quick ratio measure is your school's ability to meet its short-term obligations with cash. So that's a lot of information for my brain to wrap around all that. So I'm learning a lot as we go through this. The third report is more my lane. I think I understand it a little bit better, but this is where we become familiar with the cash flow. And it basically tells what kind of cash is coming out of your school and coming in through your school. So good article for me to read. All right, so the final resource, I think we're on the final one, mentions there was a lot of great information on finance formulas, and it gives us some great examples of what's currently happening in the U.S., which I think is very valid information that we need to become familiar with. So my first gleaning from these resources was that the school finance formulas determine how dollars are allocated to the districts. And this is where I'm really interested in learning more about my own district and the districts in Kansas specifically. The author mentions that virtually all of these formulas come with allotments that are restricted for specific purposes, which I've heard a lot about just from attending the board meetings and knowing that there's specific purposes that are tied to each fund. So I'm really anxious to learn more about how that works. Then the article told us about California's local control funding formula, which has had a lot of success. I find that to be very interesting. This is a student-based formula, and then the districts have discretion over the money. With this funding formula, they were able to eliminate 50 categorical grants, and that gave the districts more flexibility to move the money around to meet the needs and the goals of the specific district. So I would like to learn more about that. And then the final gleaning would be, they mentioned the principal empowerment account, and this is where principals receive per pupil funding allotment. And this directly is from the state, and it gives the districts full autonomy. So they have the choice on how that's going to look and where it will go. All right, so things that I've seen within my own district or even just within my own building. What I really see a lot of in the form of budgeting and the forms being filled out, the accounting is mostly completed by the administrative assistant. But I will say that my principal has done an amazing job at being very innovative when thinking about the staff. So we've been allotted the past few years funding for classroom aides for specifically kindergarten. And those aides were assigned as an all-day position. And she noticed that really a classroom aide is not needed all day long and for one classroom. So she has shifted and expanded this position to be focused more on kindergarten and first grade, which I think is really important, just maximizing your resources and being innovative with that. There have been some mistakes though, where she has missed a deadline to use a certain amount of money, and then therefore it just disappeared. I'm sure it went somewhere. I'm not sure where it went, but it was not used. Therefore, it was no longer available. When compared to other elementary schools in our district, other schools are paying for like cafeteria workers and our crosswalk assistants. And what I like is that being at a school where we have a lot of willing participants or willing volunteers, we are not paying for those positions. We are inviting volunteers to come and fill those positions. And so it's saving us a lot of money in those areas. What I do not know, or where I feel like I've not observed it, would be where, if we're saving this money, where is that going? What categories is it going into? I don't feel like I have a good understanding of if we save this money, where does it go? And then I really have not been exposed to any of the accounting systems that our district has used, or even within my building, or any of the formulas that's been used to do a lot of our accounting. So anxious to learn about those. All right, so concerns that I have. You know, a lot of our readings mentioned that the building principal really knows their building well and has full confidence in knowing where the money should go. And so I would say that, you know, like going in as a new principal to a new building that maybe you aren't familiar with their culture and some of the needs and wants, how, if that is the case, how does that work? You know, because you're not going to have that knowledge. So that would be a big concern of mine. Budgeting, just the whole idea around accounting, I feel very uncomfortable with. So I'm excited to go through this course. I know that I have the best intentions. I just sometimes get concerned with not knowing what I don't know, you know, so I want to be fully aware and immerse myself in this class, because I feel like there's a lot for me to learn here. So much of what I see my principal doing is other things that have nothing to do with finances, just behavioral concerns, staffing issues. She's just very busy. So a concern of mine would be balancing the other duties while focusing on financial concerns. And then pandemics, you know, like a situation we're in right now, or other significant unplanned events. You know, that's sometimes a concern, and it's just fresh in our minds because of COVID right now and how that all looks, and financing's probably going to be a concern coming up very soon. So those are some of my concerns if I were to be a building leader in regards to finances. And here are my resources. I enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to learning alongside you all. Take care.